Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of my interviews playlist. Our special guest for today is Ritika. Ritika, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. So, hi everyone. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. I know you just said I'm the fourth person to be on board, so it's a bit of pressure, but I'm really excited. So, in terms of who I am, I'm originally from South Asian background, coming from India. I moved to Vancouver 5 years ago to study kinesiology because I wanted to become a doctor. My parents always told me impact means becoming a doctor, and I believe that. And I think just thinking of that, I started pursuing kinesiology. But me being me, I kept myself open to trying on different things. And I remember this once, one of my friends was like, "There's a case competition coming up. Do you want to give it a hand?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And that one case competition kind of changed a lot of things for me because I was like, "Hey, impact can go beyond just being a doctor. It's beyond just a typical profession. It can apply to anything that you do, and it's just about how you do it. And that kind of just blew my mind, and one thing led to another. I started getting involved more in that strategy and problem solving side of things, initially more in the healthcare space because that aligned with my background. Then I kind of transitioned to more higher education sector because I was a part of a university, so it kind of makes sense. And then once I did that for 2 years, and then I was like, I need to do more internships, get more experience. So for another year, I got a lot of internships working with startups and nonprofits in Canada and in the US. And once I did that, I was like, you know what? I need to do something of my own. So I kind of got things together and I started my own nonprofit called Redefined. And that nonprofit, we're currently in the process of making it into a social enterprise, where we're basically providing consulting services to nonprofits on how to fundraise and build collaborations and everything. So yeah, it's been a pretty interesting journey. And coincidentally, while I was building, and transitioning, I started reaching out to a lot of consulting companies, including Deloitte, for pro bono help because that's what they offer, like free of charge consulting services. And I met people there, and I just fell in love. I was like, these people are impact obsessed. They're so humble and such a great space to work in. And I was like, I think this is my best next step, and applied and ended up coming here, and I'm enjoying every second of it. So
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, let's start from the very beginning.
okay.
So what high school did you attend, and then how did you apply to Canadian universities, and how did you immigrate to Canada?
Sure. Yeah. So up until 10th, I was like in a Indian state board, typical ICSE board. I don't know how many people know about it, but it's like a very intense, very rote learning driven kind of a board, like very quantitative and heavy. And then in my 11th, I went to an IB school, which I think is more similar to the Canadian and the US standards of teaching, whereby you have like three HL, three SL courses. That is how it looked like during that time. Also, I think my focus was a lot on psychology and biology and chemistry, so more science driven in a way, which is why I think, as I mentioned before, I always wanted to be a doctor. So that's why I took those kind of courses in 11th and 12th. And then when it was time to move abroad, I was looking for something that was more like pre-med. And kinesiology was one of those degrees that gave you flexibility in terms of pursuing that science, vision. But at the same time, it also allowed you to take on courses like in business, in sociology, this and that, which is why I decided on that. And for me, the searching process for a university was very simple. I went on Google and I typed best university. First of all, I found out a degree, I found out kinesiology just by typing, degrees for, I don't know, science nerds or something like that. And kinesiology came up. Then I did another Google search and I was like, best university for kinesiology in Canada. And UBC popped up as the first. And I just applied. And my process looked pretty simple. I think it was UBC and then U of T. And I applied to both of those universities, got into both of those. But I think I was always just, Vancouver just kind of resonated with me because I had been to Toronto before, didn't really like the vibe of it. So yeah, ended up applying, was lucky enough to get in. And yeah, that's been a bit of that.
Oh, awesome. So how was your journey as a new immigrant in Canada, especially transitioning from high school into university in a whole new country with zero connections and like living on your own?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I feel like it was a pretty interesting experience, to be honest. And I mean, it feels like it's very long ago. I mean, it is pretty long ago, almost 6 years now. And it's like, I think it was a good mix of a lot of excitement for sure, and a lot of anxiety as well, because it's like exciting, because I think you finally feel like you're taking things in your own hands. Because I think it also cultural for me, right? Because I think from the cultural background I come from, I think we're very close knit communities. We're always together, and you're always kind of living with your parents as well. We don't move out when we're 12 or 16, how it is abroad. And so independence looks very different in India versus abroad.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think we got to define that independence for ourselves when we came abroad. So I think that for me was a big one, and it was kind of me taking responsibility and feeling really proud that I'm taking care of my laundry, my food, my everything, and even my finances, by myself. And I think that felt like a great achievement. But at the same time, it was incredibly scary because A, it's not something you've done before. B, it's also a completely new culture. I remember the first day of my university when they kind of, they like kind of like an onboarding that they have, and they put us into groups, and we were chatting about common points between all of us, pain points, or even like just fun things. And a lot of people kept drawing references to like Canadian sports like ice hockey and stuff. And in India, no one does ice hockey because A, we don't have ice in most parts of India except for the north, and we don't necessarily do that sport. So I could not get a few of those references, or even if they referred to like Canadian TV shows or something, I was never into those. So I feel like I never got those references. And initially it was very intimidating. It was like, oh, I don't fit in, this and that. But I think over time, what I came to realize is it's about where you put your attention to. Because while those were areas where we didn't have commonalities, but there were other areas where we had a lot of commonalities. But I think sometimes we just have a tendency to focus on aspects that are negative instead of the positive. So I think what I started doing was kind of like shifting my mindset towards things. And instead of focusing on what was in common, I started identifying or bringing up pointers that were common among us. So, we all were passionate about creating an impact in the community. We didn't know what that looked like, but that is something we were passionate about. So I brought up conversations about creating an impact. I brought up conversations about nonprofits. I brought up conversations about how kinesiology can help us do that. So figuring out those common areas, and I realized that yes, this is something that is common between us. And I found that I found myself more belonged in a way. And I felt like, I don't want to use the term fit in, but it kind of feels like that, because now you feel like it's just like home, except the people just look different and speak a different language. And I mean, that language as well. So that's a good thing as well. So I don't know. I think it was a good mix of the two. And I think everyone's experiences can be different. But if I were to summarize it in 3 words, I think it's definitely a lot of finances, financial pressures, a lot of financial considerations you need to take into account. Two would be a lot of cultural differences, obviously, which you will have to get yourself comfortable with. And I think especially accent is a huge one as well. Depending on where you come from, I think sometimes because you speak a certain way, because obviously it's not your first language, I think it can sometimes, and this is like a very social conversation to go into, but it's like, because people have certain stereotypes and everything in mind, it can really affect your journey along the way. But I think it comes down to you and how confidently you kind of showcase who you are and your culture and your accent and everything along with it. And the third and most important thing I would be is that belongingness aspect. I think no one should ever feel like you need to fit in a way, yeah, everyone's unique, and that's the best thing about them. It's just about getting to know each other and creating a space where everyone feels included. There's a difference between the two. So I think when you realize those 3 things, I think your journey becomes a lot more not convenient, but better to plan out in a way.
Yeah, fantastic. So how was your first year at the university in terms of courses, managing your course load, managing your finances, applying for jobs, and also gaining some experiences in terms of volunteering, extracurriculars, and connecting with others?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's like, how do I say? I think first year of university, sometimes we are so excited. I think we kind of forget that we aren't here just to study. Like, I think I would also take this question in a different direction, is in terms of certain things that I've learned from having that spent that first year in university, is that don't just focus on studies. It's not the most important thing. Well, yes, it's good to have that knowledge base, for any job or anything you do in life. But at the same time, especially that obsession that people have with grades, I don't think is ideal unless you're getting into technical roles in the future. And I feel like I did commit that mistake to a certain extent in my first year, whereby I was really fixated on my grades, doing incredibly well in school, getting in all of those things, and less focused on getting experiences, getting those real world experiences that actually help you out there. It's not your biology knowledge or it's not your mathematics that's going to help you. It's going to help you. How do you apply those subjects to the actual world outside? How do you leverage that knowledge you have? I think which is most important. And experience teaches you that. So I think I would definitely say, like, from having gone through that first year, I wouldn't tell anyone to do what I did. And I would instead say is like, focus more on networking, building those relationships, whether it be through LinkedIn, whether it be through, any clubs on campus, create opportunities, even events on campus, like, case competitions or any other events that are happening. I always made sure, like, in my second year when I learned about it, I always made sure I was getting involved in these activities. And what that did was it helped me build a community around myself, of people who, again, bonded on specific things. Like if I have a part of a hiking group, we all bonded on the fact that we all enjoy hiking. So it's like, it didn't matter at that point what culture we are from, what language we spoke, what our accent was, or our financial status or whatever was. All mattered was that we all love hiking and we'll go and do it together. So I think in terms of building a community, I would definitely recommend people, to kind of do that. And even I did that. Secondly, I think one thing I might kind of made sure when it comes to managing things, because again, a lot of people, I think it really depends where the audience is coming from. But if someone's coming from India or the other countries where I think the way the educational system runs is very different. Like I know a few of my friends who I talk to in India, you just have one final exam. Like you don't have exams building up to it. Like even if you may have those exams, they're not counted towards your final grade. Your final exam is what determines what percentage you get, which is crazy. But abroad, it's completely different. It's you have regular assessments, and regular assessments have a certain degree of weightage towards your final grade. So I know a lot of students, I didn't struggle with that, but I know a lot of students do struggle with that. And I think one tip is making sure every single day, whatever you're learning, you're very attentive in class. Because I think if you want to get involved and do a lot of things and at the same time do well in studies, it's very important that class time that you get, that in-person time with your professor, you're making full use of it. Ask all the questions you need, try and pay as much as attention you can. I remember I used to tell my friends, y'all sit away from me. I said, I need to focus here. I don't want anyone chit-chatting around me, because I thought that was the time where I could invest into just learning. Because the rest of the time I wanted to invest it in getting experiences, in gaining knowledge outside of just the typical studies. So those are a few things at least that I did.
Yeah, awesome. And how did you support yourself financially?
Yeah, good question. I think this is something, especially, it's a very huge topic for a lot of international students and even a lot of Canadian students who come from different backgrounds. And I think I would say is like, obviously I did it through part-time jobs and, kind of finding those hustles, side incomes in a way for myself, in addition to those part-time jobs that I was doing. But I think one point I would say is like, there's a fine balance between your financial needs and your experience needs or your job needs. And I think drawing a distinction between the two is very important. What I mean by that is sometimes when you want to get into a particular job, so you have to know, yes, finances is important for you, for sure. Pursue a part-time job. But at the same time, you also need to be getting good experience to be able to get into a good firm or into a good company, at least starting off, right? So you have to also, like something I did was I did both. I found out a part-time job, which would help me pay for myself and support my parents in the meanwhile while I was doing all of this. And at the same time, I got experience working at other like nonprofits or startups. Initially, it was unpaid because I had no experience in marketing or consulting when I started out, right? So with these nonprofits, I told them all I knew was on that resume, I need experiences. I don't need it to show is this paid work or unpaid work. No one asks about that. People just want to know, do you have experience? And I knew I wanted to get that experience to not only develop my skill sets, but also to have something to put on that resume. So I started doing both side by side. What happened was while this part-time income was providing, a part-time source was providing me with this constant income, this job that I did for 3 months, I think I worked free of cost with these nonprofits and startups. I think 3 nonprofits and startups I was working with free of cost. But at the end of those 3 months, I was able to bring great results, leverage those results in my resume, and got a job working as a freelance consultant with a few startups and nonprofits in that same space. that I was working in currently as well. So now I was charging them about $25 to $30 an hour. Sorry, $25 to $30 half an hour, per half an hour, for having certain conversations, or I was even charging them for coming up with a market strategy, a go-to-market strategy, or like a marketing social media plan or something like that. And I started charging people for those specific things. So now I was doing three things. A, I was not only doing a part-time job. B, now through that 3 month free of cost experience that I got, I was being able to leverage that experience to get paid money on, again, like a part-time, and I was the owner of it, in a way. I could control how many hours I want to spend on this, and I was able to generate money through that and get experience. And third, what I started doing was I also got involved in clubs and activities on campus. So now it was a great combination of me not only starting to earn that base money, being able to get that experience to get a bonus money on top of that base money. And now I was also getting extra experience in certain areas where I didn't have something, So I think it's that constant loop of, I think, getting your necessities in, figured out first, and then building up on top of that.
Awesome. So what were those startups, and like how did you get to connect with them and apply it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for that, I would just say one thing is also, I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, if I did biology, I can only get into a science field, or if I did business, I can only get into business. That's not true at all. Today, transferability is a huge one. And I think for me, it was as well. When I was in kinesiology, when I identified, hey, I want to kind of really move into this, consulting route or this strategy route, I knew that, okay, I don't have the education in it, but I knew I had the passion for it. So I started figuring out, that's why I worked free of cost, because I knew I had not much to bring to the table at that point. And I knew I needed those organizations more than they needed me in a way. So what I started doing was I started looking up who doesn't want free help, So think logically. So I started looking up nonprofits and startups, which I really liked and resonated with my personal visions and values. And I started seeing their social media, this and that, and identifying what are a few things that are missing. Once I identified those things, I reached out to them on Instagram also, and on LinkedIn also, through email also. I tried all methods. I reached out to them saying, hey, my name's Ritika, blah, blah, blah. I'm in this degree. I'm hoping to get experience in this area. And I did look through your website and identify certain areas of improvement. And this is how I can help. Would love to hop on a call to chat more about this opportunity. That's it. And that is what I did to a lot of organizations. And by the end of this, I was able to I then choose 3 top organizations that I really wanted to work with, set up the criteria on what I would work on to. So I completely dictated that. I completely dictated, hey, these are the areas I really want experience in. And these are the areas I can help you with. Does that work with you? If not, what is something else also you would want me to work on? Because you want to make sure you're making them happy as well, in addition to making yourself happy. So I did that. And then I promised them I'll work with you guys for 3 months initially. So I worked with them 3 months, created impact in that area, and then just made sure to take this experience back with me so that I can leverage it to get a better job or even a paid position.
Oh, awesome. So what platforms did you use mainly to connect with those startups and organizations?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, awesome.
Yeah,
So
I think it's very simple for me. Like, a lot of people ask me, what tools and resources have you been using? And I'm just like, no, it's just LinkedIn and email for me.
oh, awesome. What advice do you give to students on using LinkedIn? Like how should they optimize their profile? How, should they make daily posts or even weekly?
Yeah.
How they can engage with others to increase their visibility, like the visibility of their profile to others?
Yeah. So now that's a long conversation, but just to summarize it, I would say one of the first most important things is, yes, LinkedIn optimization is huge. I think a lot of people, even though they have LinkedIn accounts, you don't have a LinkedIn account if you're not going to use it. I think that's just, you're kind of like lowering your credibility in a way. I think if you have a LinkedIn account, first of all, if you don't have one, please get one. Second of all, once you have a LinkedIn account, you don't have to keep posting right away. A lot of people get intimidated by when they're seeing so many creators post on LinkedIn constantly. And I felt the same way too. But I think it's like, see it in a way as if it being your own personal canvas, and treat it or take your time as you want it. Don't let others dictate that for you. Initially, when you start that account, you don't need to start posting content every single day right away. What you can start doing initially is start reaching out to people. But one thing to bear in mind is, yes, you can reach out to people, make a few connections through those sample messages you send out. But as you keep wanting to grow your network, or as you keep wanting to reach out to people in higher positions or a part of other nonprofits or startups, you will need to have something on your account that tells them more about you, that tells them about who you are as a person, what work do you do. And it's beyond just your resume information. So in addition to obviously having your experiences listed on LinkedIn, which I think is incredibly important, like, like having a proper LinkedIn profile before you even start sending out those connection requests become important, because people may accept your connection request. You may get that connect and that follower, but it won't be an active follower, if you know what I mean. That means like if you message them, they won't be replying back to you because all they can see is just your name. I know some people don't even put a picture. How can that person know you're legit? And how can the other person even like entertain you if they don't nothing about you to kind of see through that? So I feel like having a proper LinkedIn profile is the first step, I would say. Having all your experiences, that about me section is so incredibly important. It's your way of being able to tell employers or anyone you want to collaborate with about who you are, who Ritika Saraswat is beyond just her experiences. Who is she as a person? What is she passionate about? What motivates her? And any extracurriculars you're doing, if you're a co-founder of something, if you're volunteering somewhere, mentioning those there. And even your bio is incredibly important. Like if you're looking for work right now, you can mention that in your bio, because if anyone types anything kind of about you, it will always show your bio and your picture. So if your bio says, open to work or looking to work, or a marketing enthusiast looking for work, something like that, it's going to stand out to employers more. They know that this person is looking forward to these things. Even when you're creating a profile, I think there are certain hashtags you can use. So being very smart about it. If you're currently in a phase where you're looking for a job, most employers, if you think from an employee's perspective, if they are to go on the search bar on LinkedIn to look for potential employees, and if let's say they're in the field of marketing, what are they going to look for? Like, marketing enthusiast, or I don't know, marketing skills or something like that. So if you use specific those type of hashtag like job, hashtag looking for work, hashtag marketing, hashtag, Canva, or whatever it is, whatever skills you want to highlight, it's most likely that employers are going to see more of you then. And obviously the bonus on top of all of this is when you start posting. The reason posting is important is it allows employer to see any of your interests, any of your passions beyond you just speaking about it. Well, I can always talk about, I'm the founder of this nonprofit, we are helping so many people, this and that. But how can people trust you until you actually show them pictures of the work you've done, until you actually show them testimonials from the people who have been impacted? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, even I wouldn't trust someone if they just said things and never showed me how they did it. So I think that's why that posting becomes important. Yeah, those are a few things I would say to start off with.
Awesome. Thank you for mentioning all of that. So how do you believe your kinesiology undergraduate program helped you with like landing your current job at Deloitte as a consultant?
Yeah, incredibly. I think that was so much transferability. And that was the one reason I think I even made the transition, because initially when I wasn't sure of that transferability, I was very bad at conveying to people why I deserved to get into consulting. I know many times I've had even people say such discouraging words to me that, you'll never get into consulting, what is this? You just, because when they asked me questions like, so how does consulting and kinesiology relate? I did not have the best answer for it, because maybe at some point, even I wasn't sure of if the two connected. And I think you will come across people who will push you that hard to actually draw that connection between the two. And I think it's completely okay that they did do that, in that moment, even though I felt like this is so incredibly rude, this and that. But I think now that I look back, I feel like it was because of those experiences that I was pushed to kind of really like, start thinking deeply about, okay, where do I see this connection? Because it's true. If you cannot convince yourself of why you deserve something, or if you cannot convince someone else why you deserve something, how do you expect them to think that you deserve something? You know what I mean? Like, it's all up to you, the way you present yourself. And if you are confident of yourself, your skill sets currently, and the transferability of the skills, that's when you're going to be good at your job. So that's when I started realizing, hey, I need to start looking more into this. So I started breaking down kinesiology. I just didn't look at it, okay, kinesiology is science, consulting business. No, I broke kinesiology down. Okay, so what am I doing as a kinesiologist on a day-to-day basis? I was doing a few kinesiology relating jobs at that moment, like a program manager, an instructor, and everything. And I started breaking it down. Okay, I'm communicating every single day with the client. Secondly, I am definitely problem solving, because I'm taking into the client's reports from the doctor, identifying what may be the best practices or the best actions for them to take. I am monitoring that over a period of time by performing constant tests throughout that week or assessments. And then I started breaking down consulting, and I was like, whoa, this is exactly the same. The only difference is the setting. I'm doing it in a gym, they are doing it in an office, sitting across a table, you know? So I realized, wait, this is similar. So now when I was going into coffee chats and meetings with people who were in consulting, when they ever asked me that question, I was so confident about what I was talking about that I was able to convince every single person I spoke to. And they're like, yes, this is consulting. And I was like, yes, there you go. So I was like, that's why I deserve this position and everything. So I think first step I would say to anyone who's hoping to do that is really break it down. Don't look at it from the broader level, because I think that's when we kind of get stuck in those ideologies and those traditional thinking that, oh, this is this. But I think breaking it down, getting in depth about it, and just talking to a lot more people about people who have done the same thing before is very important.
Awesome. So like by breaking it down, you were able to confidently elaborate on how you are qualified for a consultant position, given that your background is kinesiology, but you were able to convince them that you actually have all the skills and the qualifications to land a consultant job.
Yes, breaking it down, identifying those skills, identifying the transferability and the similarities between the two, and how you can leverage what you have right now for that future position.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being a guest on my channel. It was a pleasure having you.
Same here. Thank you so much. Have a good one.